I was born with the ability to detect lies. My stepsister, Chloe, looked down on her blind date because she thought he dressed like a hobo. She forced me to go in her place just to reject him. I thought my blind date was going to be some rich heir driving a Ferrari, but he's just a broke loser, she sneered. If he clings to me, my life will be ruined. Go reject him for me. Just tell him you're the one he's supposed to meet. I should have said no. But I desperately needed an opportunity to escape the house that had kept me trapped for over 20 years. Yet, the moment the man across from me spoke his very first sentence, I knew he was lying. He said his monthly salary was only $5,000. Lie. He said his family background was totally ordinary. Lied. Well, since he wanted to play a part, I wasn't going to let his performance go to waste. Looking at the glowing golden wealth line rising rapidly behind his head, my eyes welled up with emotion. I eagerly grabbed his hand. Who cares if you only make $5 grand a month? Honest work is the most honorable. I don't care that you're poor. Let's get married. Amber, do you really not mind that I'm broke? Christian Vance's Adam's apple bobbed slightly as he asked tentatively. Of course I don't mind. I sat up straight, riding the wave. I can tell you're an honest, down-to-earth guy, Christian. You're definitely not the lazy type. Being broke now doesn't mean you'll be broke forever. I looked at him with a beaming smile. Well, not exactly at him. To be precise, I was staring at the golden wealth line rising behind him. That glittering golden curve was shooting straight up, climbing faster and faster by the second. So this was what a truly wealthy person looked like? Even when he was doing absolutely nothing, his wealth was practically multiplying on its own. If I could stick with him, I wouldn't just escape my toxic family, my future would be completely set. While I was lost in my fantasy, Christian continued to test me. You're really sweet, Amber. But let me lay the ugly truth out first. I'm just a regular blue-collar worker. I barely make $5,000 a month. No house, no car. Asterisk lie. Asterisk. And I have an ailing father to support. Life with me will be very hard. Asterisk lie. Asterisk. Asterisk, all lies. Asterisk. Red warning signs flashed wildly in my mind. $5,000 a month? I glanced at the blazing golden line behind him and almost snorted. No house, no car? Fine, whatever you say. Since he wanted to play the part, I had to be his perfect co-star. I reached out and firmly grasped his hand on the table, looking into his eyes with absolute sincerity. I really don't care about the money. As long as we work hard, our lives will get better and better. Christian stiffened at my sudden touch. He probably hadn't expected this kind of reaction. He lowered his head, pretending to look even more self-conscious. Seeing me dressed so cheaply, riding a ragged lime bike just to meet you, you really don't look down on me? Christian was wearing dirty canvas shoes, and his clothes were indeed very worn and cheap. But the golden wealth line behind him was about to break through the ceiling. I squeezed my thighs to keep from laughing out loud. Forcing myself to look solemn, I replied, I'm wearing old clothes passed down from my stepsister anyway. It seems we both know how to save money. No wonder we get along so well. Chloe had previously tried to act poor on her blind dates to gain sympathy from rich guys so they would spend money on her. But she never expected this. Christian had beaten her to the punch, pretending to be broke to test his date. Seeing that I was indeed dressed in faded clothes and looked thin and pale, Christian's suspicion seemed to fade a little. But his test wasn't over yet. Since you think so highly of me, Amber, we can't just sit here drinking cheap coffee. Let me buy you lunch. We can talk about our future wedding, too. When he pulled out his phone to pay the bill, he made sure I saw the badly cracked screen of his old phone. I didn't say a word. Instead, I pulled out my own shattered phone and bought him a bottle of cold water. It's hot today. Have some water. We have to start saving money from now on. I wanted to see just how far Christian was going to take this act. He led me down the street and stopped in front of a cheap, low-end buffet. Seeing me freeze at the entrance, Christian had an I knew it look on his face. Still, he rubbed his hands together, pretending to be embarrassed. I'm just a warehouse mover. I don't make much. After rent, there's barely anything left. Amber, I'm so sorry to bring you to a place like this. Honestly, I usually can't even afford a buffet. Asterisk lie. Asterisk. The red warnings in my head flashed so bright my eyes practically ached. I snapped back to reality, my stomach rumbling loudly. You have no idea. Ever since my dad brought my stepmother and stepsister into our house, I've barely had enough to eat. I have to work part-time to pay for my own tuition. When I'm hungry, I just buy expired clearance food from the grocery store. Don't worry, this buffet is a feast to me. I spoke the absolute truth, without a shred of shame. In fact, I couldn't wait. I marched right in and grabbed a tray. If this were Chloe, she would have thrown the tray at Christian's face and told him to go to hell. But my eyes were practically glowing as I piled food onto my plate. Fried chicken, yes please. Mashed potatoes, definitely. Roast beef, oh my god, yes. Christian followed behind me. Seeing my plate piled high like a mountain and watching me eat with pure, unadulterated joy, he was utterly stunned. I can tell you're actually starving. You weren't lying. I was eating so happily that I barely heard him. Compared to my black hole stomach, Christian clearly wasn't used to this kind of food. He barely touched his plate. I ended up finishing all of his leftovers, too. After cleaning every plate, I patted my full stomach and thanked him repeatedly. Thank you so much. This is the most satisfying meal I've had in months. Don't worry. When I make it big, I'll treat you to the finest dinner. Christian's eyes flickered, and a faint, genuine smile appeared at the corner of his lips. When he offered to take me home, I waved my hands in refusal. I'm not going back there. I've already rented a small basement room. I plan to stay there while I look for a job. Before our date, Chloe had bragged to the matchmaker about being a pampered little princess. She despised this date, hated his cheap clothes, and refused to even show her face. So now, when Christian tried to dig deeper into my situation, I could tell him the truth with zero guilt. My mom passed away when I was young. Not long after, my dad married Tiffany and brought Chloe into the family. Since then, I became Chloe's favorite punching bag. She had so many ways to torment me. My dad knew, but he just didn't care. But hey, they gave me a roof over my head, so I guess I should still be grateful. Christian's fists clenched as he listened. And you just took it? You let your stepmother and stepsister bully you like that? I nodded, pulling on my sleeves. I showed Christian the old scars on my arms. Some were burn marks from Chloe's curling iron, others were deep scratches from her nails. I couldn't help it when I was a kid. When I got older and wanted to move out, they took my passport, birth certificate, and social security card, so I couldn't leave. I looked up and smiled at him. But it's fine now. I've finally graduated from college. I can survive on my own. Once I save enough money, I'll pay them back for the food and cut ties with them completely. Amber, to be honest, when I first met you today, I thought you were just playing victim to scam me. Christian was now entirely convinced I was telling the truth. He fell silent for a few seconds, his eyes deep and intense. If you could make one wish right now, what would it be? I sneakily glanced at the golden wealth line rising behind him. He was still pretending to be broke. Asking him to give me millions was unrealistic. But asking him to use his connections to get me a job? That wasn't too greedy, right? I sighed, pretending to be stressed. Just being able to eat 3 meals a day would be great. I hope to find a job as soon as possible, save some money, and move out of that basement. Christian raised an eyebrow mysteriously. Maybe your wish will come true sooner than you think. Asterisk true. Asterisk. My heart swelled with anticipation. Although I still didn't know the exact details of Christian's background, I knew he was powerful. After thanking him sincerely for the lunch, I splurged to buy him a cheap ice cream for dessert. He finally walked me to the subway station, looking reluctant to say goodbye. To my absolute shock, right after Christian left, I received a phone call from the HR department of a major listed corporation I had interviewed with earlier. Is this Miss Amber Miller? Congratulations, you've passed the interview. Is it convenient for you to come in tomorrow to complete the onboarding process? I held my phone, freezing for several seconds. I didn't know the exact connection between this company and Christian, but I was absolutely certain this stroke of luck wasn't from heaven, it was from Christian. The next day, I smoothly completed my onboarding. The entire process was easier than I could have ever imagined. Excited, I messaged Christian on Snapchat. Asterisk, you are literally my lucky charm. I actually got the job. Asterisk. Asterisk, this luck is all thanks to you. I have to treat you to dinner to thank you. Asterisk. Christian readily agreed. He still showed up in that same cheap, worn-out outfit, even adding a lame excuse. I haven't bought new clothes in forever. I only have this one set to wear for dates. Please don't write me off. While he said this, the warning lie was screaming in my head. But I didn't call him out. I just smiled. Once I get my first paycheck, I'll buy you some brand new clothes. Christian looked genuinely surprised. You can barely feed yourself and you want to buy me clothes? Well, you treated me to a buffet and listened to me complain. You're good to me, so I should be good to you. The warmth and emotion on Christian's face this time had absolutely no hint of acting. From that day on, I threw myself into my new job, working hard for my future. Christian and I met up almost every day, and we grew closer and closer. Even though we still mostly met at cheap diners, Christian seemed more and more relaxed. He didn't try to test or probe me anymore. On payday, I kept my promise and took Christian to buy a new shirt and jeans. Holding the clothes I bought him, Christian looked at me with a deep, emotional gaze. Amber, don't worry. Your good luck has only just begun. He told me he had to be busy for a few days. Once he was done, he would give me a massive surprise. I wasn't sure what he meant, and I didn't dare to fantasize too much. In fact, I thought it was better if Christian just kept pretending to be broke. When he was pretending, we could interact like equals. What if one day, he stopped acting? What if he turned back into a high and mighty billionaire? I wouldn't even know how to face him. For the next few days, I really couldn't reach him. He would occasionally send me a Snapchat message, telling me to be patient. But before I could wait for Christian, the person I least wanted to see showed up. Chloe had somehow found out my office address. Amber, how far have you gotten with that blind date of mine?
Call him out right now.
I need to take a good look at him. I went to a luxury hotel with my friends today, and I saw him from a distance. He was surrounded by a crowd of people, and everyone was calling him Mr. Vance. With a furious expression, Chloe shoved her phone screen right into my face. The man in the photo was indeed Christian. It turned out he was the sole heir to the legendary Vance family of New York. He was wearing a bespoke, luxury designer suit, sporting a multi-million-dollar watch, and surrounded by a flock of bodyguards. Thinking about how this untouchable billionaire heir had actually worn rags just to eat a cheap buffet with me, I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. Christian really went all out to test his blind date. Terrified that Chloe would find Christian and expose the fact that I had impersonated her, I racked my brain to keep her calm. You're overthinking things, Chloe. That guy took me to a dirt cheap buffet for our first date. Every time we meet, he wears the same trashy clothes. Even his phone has a shattered screen. With how broke he looks, how could he possibly be the heir to the Vance family? Seeing Chloe look at me with deep suspicion, I quickly pulled up my Snapchat history and showed her the photos of the cheap buffets and the receipts. Chloe scrolled through my phone for a long time. Then she looked at my worn-out clothes, and her suspicion finally faded.
True.
If he were actually rich, there's no way he wouldn't spend money on you. Why would he make you suffer with him? Besides, a man of his status would have extremely high standards. He'd never look at a charity case like you. Before she left, Chloe didn't miss the chance to insult me. Amber, you were born to be at the bottom. You deserve to be with a broke loser like him. Just don't tell anyone you're a miller when you're out. We can't afford to lose face because of you. Looking at Chloe's smug, arrogant face, I swallowed my anger. But a tiny spark of hope flared up in my heart. What if? What if one day Christian proudly chose me in front of everyone as the Vance heir, completely slapping Chloe in the face? What would her expression look like then? But after only a few seconds of fantasizing, I shook my head to clear those thoughts. Christian had already gotten me this amazing job. I had already used up all my luck. How could I dare to expect a miracle like that? After stabilizing my emotions, I kept my head down and worked peacefully for another 3 days. That afternoon, my supervisor called me to join a major project launch meeting. They said a powerful executive from the partner company was coming, and all the new hires had to be there to show respect. Clutching my files, I walked into the conference hall, only to freeze instantly. The figure standing on the stage looked so much like the man who had eaten cheap buffet food with me, and yet so different. In the next second, the host spoke respectfully into the microphone. Now, please join me in welcoming our CEO, Mr. Christian Vance. My brain went entirely blank. I stood there, frozen like a statue. As soon as the meeting ended, I tried to slip away. But Christian had already cut through the crowd, walking toward me with a gaze full of gentleness. Amber, why are you staring? Did you forget me after just a few days? All the surrounding employees began to whisper, speculating about my relationship with Christian. My heart was pounding like crazy. Was this real? Had the miracle actually happened? Just as I was hesitating to respond, a sharp, screeching voice suddenly pierced the air from behind me. Mr. Vance, you've been tricked by Amber. The person you were supposed to meet that day was me. My breath hitched. I turned around stiffly. Chloe was storming through the crowd, marching straight up to Christian. Chloe Miller, am your actual blind date. Seeing Christian's face instantly turn cold, I felt like I had been plunged into an ice bath. It was over. I had finally waited for Christian to reveal his identity to me. But if he found out that all our sweet memories were built on a foundation of lies and deception, forget about being with him. I would probably lose my job and my livelihood instantly. I desperately wanted to open my mouth and explain, but terror gripped my throat, and I couldn't squeeze out a single word. The mocking whispers and contemptuous glares from the crowd made me want to shrink into the floor. Look, this is the message the matchmaker sent me. Here is the date, time, and location of our meeting. I have so much proof that Amber lied to you. You can't let this fraud get away with it. Under Chloe's hysterical shrieks, Christian calmly took her phone and glanced at it. The next second, he frowned, turned his gaze to me, and spoke in a chilling voice. Chloe's triumphant shrieks echoed through the high-ceilinged conference hall. She stood there, chest heaving, holding out her phone like a golden ticket, waiting for the sky to fall on my head. The entire executive team fell dead silent. Dozens of eyes swung between Chloe's red, flushed face and my pale, frozen mask. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Every instinct I had, built over 20 years of living under Tiffany and Chloe's thumb, screamed at me to drop my gaze, apologize, and disappear into the shadows. Christian turned his gaze toward me. His dark eyes were cold, devoid of the soft warmth I had grown accustomed to over cheap coffee and $5 buffet plates. He raised a finger, pointing straight at me. You. His voice cut through the room like a freshly sharpened blade. I squeezed my eyes shut, preparing for the blow. Have been working way too hard today, Amber. Take a seat before you faint. I snapped my eyes open. Christian didn't even look at Chloe. Instead, he stepped right past her. Outstretched arm, grabbed an executive chair from the front row, and pulled it out for me with quiet, effortless grace. Chloe froze. Her arm hung limply in the air. Mr. Vance, didn't you hear me? She lied to you. She's an imposter. I am Chloe Miller, the matchmaker arranged for you to meet me. Christian finally turned around to face her. The temperature in the room plummeted. I heard you perfectly fine, Christian said, his voice terrifyingly calm. And who authorized an unbadged outsider to scream like a lunatic inside a Vance group private board meeting? He glanced toward the doors. Two hulking, suit-clad security officers immediately stepped forward. Wait, Christian. Chloe panicked, backing up a step. She's a fraud. She stole my date. She sneaked into your life pretending to be a soft, innocent victim. She didn't sneak into anything, Christian said coldly. He reached into his tailored suit jacket, pulled out his phone, and tapped the screen twice. The moment you refused to show up because your matchmaker told you I was an ordinary logistics worker who rode a Lime bike, I received a full file on you, Miss Miller. I knew your face, your bank statements, and your social media accounts before I even sat down at that coffee shop. Chloe's face drained of all color. What? When Amber walked in wearing hand-me-down clothes, carrying a shattered phone, and trembling with honest hesitation, I knew she wasn't Chloe Miller. Christian continued, taking a step toward her. I stayed. I ate cheap food with her. I bought a bottle of water with her last $5. I gave her a job offer at my subsidiary not because of a matchmaker's paper, but because she was the first person in 5 years who looked at me without asking for my family's balance sheet. He leaned in slightly, his tone laced with pure contempt. You threw away your own date because you thought I was broke. And now that you see the suit, you come crawling back, claiming you were robbed. Christian turned to the security guards. Escort this woman off the premises. If she sets foot in any Vance group building again, issue a formal trespass order and notify our legal counsel.
No.
Christian, listen to me.
Dad. Mom.
They won't let this go. Chloe screamed, her manicured nails digging into the security guard's arms as they forcefully hauled her backward down the aisle. Amber, you ungrateful bitch. I'll destroy you. Her hysterical voice faded down the corridor until the heavy oak doors slammed
shut.
Silence returned to the hall. Christian adjusted his cufflinks, turned back to the room full of gaping executives, and said smoothly, Where were we?
Yes.
The Q3 financial report. My mind was spinning so fast I could barely breathe. Behind Christian's head, that blinding, golden wealth line wasn't just shooting upward anymore, it was blazing like a star. And right beneath it, a tiny, glowing prompt floated in my mind. True, he hadn't just saved me. He had chosen me from the very start. After the meeting concluded, Christian led me directly to the top floor executive suite via a private elevator. The moment the doors closed, the cold, intimidating CEO facade melted away. Christian sagged slightly against the handrail, loosened his silk tie, and pulled out a familiar, badly cracked phone from his pocket. God, those suits are tight, he muttered. I miss my $20 t-shirt. I stared at him, my brain still struggling to bridge the gap between the billionaire industrialist, and the guy who scarfed down fried chicken at a low-end buffet. Christian, I stammered, clutching my notepad to my chest. You knew? From day one. Christian stopped and turned to me. He reached out, gently taking the notepad from my trembling hands and setting it aside. Amber, my family controls half the commercial real estate on the East Coast.
Do.
You really think my security team would let me sit down with a random stranger without running a background check? He smiled softly. I saw the matchmaker's photos of Chloe. Plastic, shallow, demanding a guy with a Ferrari. When you walked into that cafe, looking like a terrified little deer, trying to reject me as quickly as possible, I knew you weren't her. So I checked my phone. My assistant had already sent me your photo. Amber Miller, Chloe's illegitimate stepsister, locked away like a ghost in her own house. My breath hitched. Then why didn't you call me out? Because you bought me a bottle of water, Christian said softly, his dark eyes locking onto mine with absolute intensity. You were terrified, broke, and wearing clothes 3 sizes too big, yet you used your last few dollars to make sure I wasn't thirsty in the heat. In my world, Amber, nobody gives you anything without expecting $1 million in return. True. The green validation in my mind brought tears to my eyes. I didn't mean to trick you, I whispered, the guilt finally pouring out. I needed a way out. They stole my papers, my passport, my birth certificate. I couldn't get a real lease or a proper job without them. I was desperate. Christian reached out and cupped my cheek. His hand was warm, firm, and steady. I know, he said softly. And that's why we're going to get them back. All of them. Before I could ask what he meant, his desk phone buzzed sharp and loud. Christian pressed the speakerphone button. His assistant's voice came through. Mr. Vance, Mr. Richard Miller, Amber's father, is on line 1. He sounds extremely irate. He's demanding to speak with you regarding a family dispute. Christian looked at me, an evil little smirk playing at the corner of his lips. Put him through, Christian commanded. A loud, furious voice burst out of the speaker. Christian Vance, I don't care how rich your family is. You have no right to humiliate my daughter Chloe and harbor my other daughter. Amber is a thief. She stole Chloe's identity, and she belongs under my roof until I say otherwise. I stiffened. That voice had haunted my nightmares for 20 years. Christian didn't even flinch. He sat back on the edge of his mahogany desk, casually spinning a heavy gold pen between his fingers. Mr. Miller, Christian said coldly, you have 5 minutes to bring Amber's original birth certificate, social security card, and passport to my office.
If
you aren't here in 5 minutes, the tax evasion audit I just requested on your logistics firm will be submitted directly to the IRS. Silence crashed over the line. What did you say? Richard's voice wavered, his bravado instantly shattering. For minutes and 45 seconds, Christian replied calmly and hung up. 30 minutes later, Richard Miller and his wife, Tiffany, burst into the executive lounge. Tiffany was dressed in head-to-toe luxury brands, likely bought with the money my father had pinched from my late mother's inheritance. Richard looked pale, his shirt wrinkled and sweat dripping down his temples. Chloe was cowering behind them, her eyes red from crying, glaring at me with pure venom. Christian, Mr. Vance. Richard gasped, rushing forward, holding a manila folder with both hands. There's been a mistake. A complete misunderstanding.
Here are
Amber's documents. All of them. Untouched. I stepped forward and snatched the folder from his hands. I opened it up. My passport. My birth certificate. My social security card.
the
Papers that had held me prisoner in a basement room for years were finally in my fingers. Amber. Tiffany forced a sickeningly sweet smile, taking a step toward me. Darling, why didn't you tell us you were dating Mr. Vance? We were just keeping those papers safe for you. You know how reckless you can be.
lie.
The word flashed blood red across my vision. I slammed the folder shut and looked Tiffany straight in the eye. You locked them in Dad's safe, so I couldn't apply for college dorms. You told me if I left, you'd report me to the police for theft.
Amber.
How can you accuse your mother like that? Richard yelled, trying to regain his paternal authority. We fed you.
We clothed you.
We gave you a roof over your head after your mother died.
Lie.
My mother left this house to me in her will, I said, my voice rising, surprisingly steady and loud. You altered the deed while I was a minor.
You
Used her life insurance payout to buy Chloe's sports car. Richard's face went from pale to ghostly white. How? How do you? He didn't know about my ability. He thought I was guessing. But seeing the red warning signs flashing rapidly over his head gave me absolute, unshakable
certainty.
I know everything, Dad, I said, stepping closer to him. I know about the offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. I know about the double bookkeeping at Miller Logistics. And I know you tried to sell my mother's remaining jewelry last week to cover your gambling debts. True. Richard stumbled back, clutching his chest. You've been spying on me. She hasn't, Christian interrupted, stepping up beside me and placing a protective arm around my waist. But my financial intelligence team has. Mr. Miller, as of 10 minutes ago, Vance Capital has acquired 80% of your firm's outstanding debt. You don't own your company anymore.
Ido.
Chloe gasped. Tiffany shrieked, grabbing Richard's arm. Richard,
What is he
talking about? It means, Christian said, looking down at them like insects, that you have 1 hour to vacate the house that belongs to Amber's late mother. If you take so much as a silver spoon that doesn't belong to you, my legal team will file criminal charges before sunset. You can't do this, Chloe shrieked, finally snapping. She's a nobody.
She's
Just a broken, damaged orphan. I am the legitimate heiress of the Miller family. You were supposed to marry me. Christian didn't even look at her. He pressed a button on his desk. Security, clear my office. 4 heavy-set guards marched in, grabbing Richard, Tiffany, and Chloe by their arms. As they were dragged out, screaming and cursing, the heavy double doors clicked shut, plunging the office into sweet, tranquil quiet. My hands were shaking violently. I dropped into a couch, clutching the folder
containing my freedom against my chest.
20 years of fear, torment, and starvation ended in less than 20 minutes. Christian walked over, sat down beside me, and softly wrapped his arms around
Me.
I leaned into his shoulder, and for the first time in my life, I let the tears fall freely. Over the next month, my life transformed at a pace that left me breathless. With Christian's legal team backing me, my mother's estate was fully restored to my name. The grand suburban house that Richard and Tiffany had stolen was reclaimed. Rather than moving into the grand mansion alone, I put the house up for sale.
I
Didn't want the memories of that toxic home. I wanted a fresh start. Meanwhile, Richard's company collapsed under the weight of his own financial
fraud.
Without the house or their assets, Richard, Tiffany, and Chloe were forced to move into a tiny, dilapidated 2-room apartment on the outer edges of the city, the very kind of living space Chloe had spent her entire life despising. Chloe was forced to take a job as a cashier at a discount department store. Every time a customer demanded a refund or yelled at her, her aristocratic pride
Was chipped away piece by piece.
As for me, I didn't quit my job at the company. I worked harder than ever. I was no longer just the shy girl trying to hide in the basement. I was promoted to assistant project manager, earning my own living, paying my own rent for a bright, sunny apartment downtown. Christian and I continued to date. But despite his astronomical wealth, our favorite outings remained delightfully simple. One Friday evening, Christian picked me up outside my apartment building.
He
Wasn't driving his sleek black Bugatti or his Maybach. He arrived riding a bright yellow Lime bike, wearing an oversized hoodie and worn-out sneakers. I stood on the sidewalk, bursting out laughing. Are you serious, Mr. CEO? Christian grinned, pushing back his messy hair. Hey, you said you missed our humble beginnings. Hop on the back pegs. I'm taking you to dinner. I climbed onto the back of the bike, wrapping my arms tightly around his waist. As he pedaled down the glowing city streets, the wind blew through my hair, carrying the warm scent of summer and Christian's clean cologne. Looking up, I could still see that shimmering, golden wealth line rising high above his head into the night sky. But for the first time, I realized I wasn't looking at the gold anymore. I was looking at the back of the man who had pulled me out of the dark. He stopped the bike in front of a small, glowing neon sign. It was the very same cheap buffet where we had eaten our first real meal together. I bought the place last week, Christian whispered in my ear as he helped me off the bike, renovated the kitchen, kept the low prices for the locals, and hired a 5-star chef to handle the roast beef. My eyes welled up. You bought a low-end buffet just for me? I bought it because it's where I fell in love with a girl who ate 3 plates of fried chicken and told me honest work was honorable, Christian said softly. He grabbed my hand, leading me inside. The restaurant was completely empty, decorated with warm fairy lights and soft jazz music playing in the background. In the center of the room sat a single table set with fresh red roses and candle lamps. We sat down, enjoying a feast of high-end comfort food. Christian pulled out a bottle of vintage champagne, popping the cork with a soft thwack. As he poured 2 glasses, he looked across the table at me, his gaze deep and searching. "Amber," he began, his voice dropping an octave. "There's something I've been wanting to ask you." "What is it?" I smiled, taking a sip of the sweet wine. "That day, our very first date," Christian said, leaning forward on his elbows. "I wore dirty canvas shoes, carried a cracked phone, and told you I only made $5,000 a month." He paused, staring into my eyes. Any other woman would have walked out. Chloe certainly did.
But you, when I
"Told you I was broke," your eyes lit up. "You grabbed my hand like I was a lottery ticket." He smirked, a playful glint in his eyes. "Be honest with me, Amber. Did you really just fall for my charming personality? Or did you somehow know I was lying from the start?" My heart skipped a beat. I dropped my fork. I had kept my secret hidden from everyone my entire life.
if I told people I
Could see red floating warning signs and glowing golden wealth lines, they would call me insane and lock me in an asylum. I looked at Christian. The golden line behind his head was steady, radiating a soft, comforting warmth. I took a deep breath. He had trusted me with his life, his wealth, and his protection. It was time I trusted him with my ultimate secret. "Christian," I began tentatively, "what if I told you
I was born with a
strange ability?" Christian raised an eyebrow, listening intently, without mocking me. "What kind of ability?" "I can see lies," I whispered. I pointed to my eyes. Whenever someone tells a lie in front of me, floating red text flashes in my mind. And whenever I look at someone's financial trajectory, I see a visual line behind their head. Christian blinked. He sat frozen for 3 long seconds. Then, he leaned back in his chair and tilted his head. "Are you telling me you saw a red sign when I said I made $5,000 a month?" It practically blinded me, I confessed, blushing crimson. "And behind your head, Christian, your wealth line was shooting straight through the roof.
It
was like looking at a walking mountain of solid gold." Christian broke into a deep, booming laugh that echoed off the buffet walls. He laughed so hard tears came to his eyes. "So," Christian gasped, catching his breath, "you weren't some angelic, self-sacrificing saint who loved broke men. You were a golden goose hunter who saw right through my cheap clothes." "Hey." I was desperate to escape my stepmother. I protested, pouting as I kicked his shoe under the table. "And besides, even if you were broke, I still gave you my last bottle of water." Christian's laughter softened into an incredibly gentle smile. He reached across the table, taking both of my hands into his broad palms. "Test me," Christian said softly. "What?" "Test me right now," Christian repeated, looking straight into my eyes with unwavering conviction. "Use your power." I focused my vision, staring intensely into his deep hazel eyes. Christian took a deep breath and spoke, every single word steady and clear. "Amber Miller, I have loved you from the moment you smiled at me over that shattered phone. I will devote the rest of my life to protecting you, cherishing you, and making sure you never suffer a single day of pain again. You are the only woman I will ever want." I waited. I braced myself for the red warnings. I braced myself for the floating text. Nothing flashed. No red signs. No warnings. Instead, a radiant, emerald green light filled my vision, illuminating his face with absolute, unadulterated purity. True. 100% true. Tears poured down my cheeks. I squeezed his hands tightly, unable to speak. Through the lump in my throat, Christian stood up from his chair. He walked around the table, dropped gracefully onto one knee on the polished tile floor and pulled a small, velvet box from his pocket. He flipped it open, revealing a breathtaking, pear-cut canary yellow diamond that glowed like a tiny sun under the candlelight. "Amber," Christian said, his voice trembling slightly with genuine emotion.
You
"Can see through every lie in the world. So look at my heart right now and tell me, will you marry me?" I looked at the ring, then down at the man who had given me a new life, a new hope, and a love that needed no testing. "Yes," I sobbed, throwing my arms around his neck as he lifted me off my feet. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." 6 months later, the wedding of the century took place at the Vance family's private coastal estate in Newport. The lawn was covered in white roses, overlooking the sparkling blue ocean.
The
Guest list included international dignitaries, CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and global celebrities. I wore a custom silk gown with a 10-foot train, adorned with thousands of hand-sewn pearls. As I walked down the aisle on the arm of my former college mentor, who had stepped in to walk me down the aisle in place of my estranged father, I looked toward the altar. Christian stood there in a sharp charcoal tuxedo, looking like a prince, his eyes fixed entirely on me. Behind him, the golden wealth line was still there, but it no longer mattered to
me.
because right beside it was a massive, brilliant green glow that encompassed his entire soul. In the back row of the public spectator area outside the estate gates, a small crowd of onlookers had gathered to watch the grand ceremony through binoculars. Among them stood Chloe, wearing a faded uniform from her department store shift, her hair unkempt and her face haggard. She watched through the iron gates as Christian slid the diamond band onto my finger, as the crowd erupted into thunderous applause, and as Christian lifted me into his arms to kiss me under a shower of white rose petals. Chloe clawed at the iron gates, her knuckles turning white, tears of regret and bitterness streaming down her face. She had thrown away her golden ticket because she judged a book by its worn-out
Cover.
and now, the unwanted, abused stepsister she had trampled on for 20 years was standing at the top of the world, bathed in eternal love and light. Christian pulled back from the kiss, resting his forehead against mine as the applause roared around us. "What are you seeing right now, my love?" he whispered, his hands resting gently on my waist. I smiled, looking up into his beautiful, honest eyes, feeling the warmth of his heart beating against mine. "Nothing," I whispered back, lacing my fingers through his. For the first time in my life, I don't need to look for lies anymore. Because with him, every single moment was the absolute truth.